Request for an endorsement of the Mylars.
I would move that we move forward with the endorsement of these Mylars.
Second. Did you have a comment?
I had a question, but
Okay.
go. Oh, I was just going to ask whether the tree removal issue was all resolved. Evan?
I think
It's been resolved as far as I'm concerned. The board didn't seem to want to take it up as
that's not up to us.
I have a question. Where is it with the, didn't they have a court case going on?
I
Where is
think that was settled
that's
out.
been
That's
settled.
been settled?
Settled,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right, so we got a motion and a second.
Who was the second, please?
Henry,
Oh, I'm sorry. Henry.
all in favor?
Aye.
That moves on. 9 Acton Road. Bill, you're up.
My presentation is sort of somewhat, I guess, contingent now on getting some answers from town council. So, for the record, my name's Philip Iliopoulos. I'm an attorney here in Chelmsford with offices at 9 North Road, representing Homar LLC. And I think that when we last met with the board, we were tasked with a couple of things. One is to have some better visuals so that we could really understand the look of the building, maybe from a three-dimensional standpoint. Also to try to look at what the building would look like from the direct abutter, to look at the issues maybe that the fire department might have with the property, to look at the commercial aspect of it, and I know the board back then and even tonight really weighed in on the commercial piece. And I suppose I'd like to start there if it's okay, and then we can maybe go through some visuals. When I drive by this every day, okay, as many of us do. And I think there's always a desire on our parts to look at a property that is clearly being underutilized and say, boy, how would we like to see that property be used? What would we like to see in that building? And it was looked at as a potential commercial use. But it was quickly, after looking at it, discarded because it just hasn't worked there. So just some statistics for you with regards to rent, occupancy, some interest that's been in that property. The average per square foot rent in Chelmsford is a little over $28 per square foot for commercial retail. This property is about a third of that in terms of what they're able to get for rents. So about $9 a square foot. You've got for vacancy rates in Chelmsford, it averages about 20% commercial and retail. This property has remained 70% vacancy for over 4 years. So they haven't been able to attract any tenants there. So they haven't had any new leases in the building since July of 2016, any new tenants, since a little over 3 years. They haven't been able to get a new tenant in there. And they haven't had any qualified leads in over 6 months, let alone getting an actual tenant in there. So it has not been a property that has attracted commercial tenants. It has not been a property that's attracted commercial buyers. They have not had any offers on the property for a buyer that's looking to use it or redevelop it as a commercial property. The only interest that they've had in this property is, and not just from my client, but from others, is to remove it and put just residential there. But that's what buyers have seen as really the only viable use. Part of it is the location. If you're going to open up retail, you're not going to do it there. It's just not a place that supports retail. If I'm going to open up a new restaurant, it's not going to be on Route 27. It's going to be maybe in the downtown proper center. So my fear is if we look at that property and say, well, we really think it should have a commercial component, and no one's willing to put the investment to buy it at what they'd have to buy it for, to take the risk to put in a commercial component, this property's going to remain as it is, continue to deteriorate, and someday maybe it's going to be like Stop and Shop and Marshall's, and we're going to be waiting and waiting for a vacant property to have life. The market's telling us that this property doesn't warrant commercial. We might like it to have commercial, we might hate to see losing some commercial in the downtown area, but what we might like isn't necessarily what's going to come to be. When they haven't been able to get a new tenant in that building for 3.5 years, that's telling. Let alone really any activity at all in over 6 months. So, you know, it's a problem. It's the type of thing that I think the Stop and Shop Marshall site was a much more attractive site than this because it still was in sort of that commercial feel of downtown area. Look how long that remained vacant. No one was willing to touch that property. Was it 10 years? I don't even know. I mean, it was almost the entire time I was a selectman, that building was vacant. I think that we don't want to lose commercial space in town, in the local downtown either, but that's the whole reason all these bylaws and overlays were created, because the commercial properties were suffering. The commercial properties were not being redeveloped. And one thing that the town looked at is bringing residential into the downtown area to help hopefully stir some type of redevelopment of the commercial properties. Gristmill, I think, was a good option, and that'll bring, you know, maybe 50 new people to the downtown area. This project could bring maybe 60 or 70 people to the downtown area. The project at the Santander property could bring another 70 people to the downtown area. Those people might help encourage some of those other commercial properties to redevelop. And so maybe with these 3 projects, we would see a revitalization of the businesses down there.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really seen it, other than what was redeveloped by the Winstanleys. What other redevelopment have you seen in Chelmsford Center in the last 50 years? Since I've been alive, I don't remember any. We lost the gas station. I don't think that's a redevelopment. We've got the Stop and Shop Marshall site, but what else? Has there been anything else? I can't think of one. So I guess it just depends. We can maintain the status quo, and maybe we don't want the center to change, and we just like it the way it is. That's okay. But I don't think we can just say, well, we think commercial and residential makes sense here without looking at the history of that property and whether it's actually worked there. Now, maybe town council will tell you you're limited in your ability, and then fine, the building just sits there, and that's that. That's what we get. But if there is flexibility, I sense from the board would like to see this to be commercial and residential, or some board members. And in a perfect world, if it worked, I wouldn't mind that either. But the history has shown the site is not attractive for commercial, and our clients aren't interested in doing that. So if that is something that the board will only look at those types of projects, then we'd want to know that, and we just move on. And, you know, we would see what happens next with that property. Maybe someone will come along that will do it, but they haven't found anyone yet to do it in the history of the project being on the market. So I wanted to at least give you some background as to the difficulty this site has had in attracting any tenants, let alone tenants that are going to pay close to market rent in Chelmsford, or the average, I should say, rent in Chelmsford. It just hasn't happened. So I think that's a challenge that I'd like the board to kind of think about in terms of what we want for this property and whether that what we want will match what the market will bear. And I just don't think it'll bear it, unfortunately. So that was sort of some background information that I thought I wanted you to at least think about in terms of what we think will work here and what we won't. Just some other updates. And I think what we'll do is try to keep this quicker because we're not going to be taking any action today because you're going to be waiting for town council's opinion. So just as some further updates, we did meet with the fire department. And we're able to accommodate the walkway that we had going along the side of the building. We're able to widen it. You'll see accommodate a fire lane, and they're fine with it. So there are no issues with the fire department.
Good.
Obviously, when we go formal, if we get to that point, they'll have detailed issues about hydrants and everything else. But in terms of accessing the building along the left side, they're satisfied. We did meet with the abutter. The project team did. I wasn't at the meeting, and talked about some of their concerns and screening and the height, and it was a fruitful meeting. I'm not saying they're going to come out and support the project or come out and deny it, but it was a good working meeting with good communication and a commitment to keep that communication open. And you'll see some pictures that the board wanted to see about the visuals from that side, because I know there was concern about the board and that direct abutter. So you'll see some of that spelled out in terms of the height and the look and things of that nature. And then I think there was a real difficulty in our presentation before to really view the building. So we've got some visuals that I think will be much easier to at least visualize what the building will look like, so that you can decide whether it's a building that is one that you could potentially support in a determination of applicability. So I thought maybe we could go through those slides, and I don't know, we can kind of.
Now we gotta shrink.
You want it to go to the top? Yeah. Okay, just leave it, and leave it.
Can you move the cursor off of the menu bar for me, see if that works?
They're blown up. You want me to shrink them down?
Yeah.
No, he's going to the first one.
If you hit fit to page, will it work? Okay. Do we want to have maybe Phil come up and give us a walkthrough of the look of the building?
Good evening again. I'm Philip Horesco, architect, landscape architect. If I may step away from the podium, I think you can hear me.
We got a new
I'll
one
talk
hanging from
loud
the
enough so
ceiling,
you
too.
can hear
There's a
back there.
microphone hanging.
It's easier for me to point with my hand and stand here in front of the
There's a
screen.
microphone at the.
Yeah, you're good.
There's a microphone there?
Yeah.
So
We're good.
It'll pick you up.
just make sure everyone can hear in the room. This is our option A, which steps down. It's 4 stories at this part of the building, but it steps down, as we questioned last time. I thought this 3D model would help us understand. There's a 1-story section, a 2-story section, and 3-story sections along this side toward the neighbor's property on 19 Acton Road. The various configurations to these kinds of things, as an architect, having done this before, it's moved some of the things around, making something a little taller one place than another. But for the moment, this is what we have, and it's 52 apartments that we have there in this scenario. And we go to the next scenario, please, which is option. Can we get to it?
A little further up. Go
Up.
What do we do? Here?
Perfect.
Here we go. And this is straight up 3 stories, but what it has is some penthouse extension of what we call penthouse extension. These are apartments that would extend from the lower level, the 3rd floor up, with spiral stairs, some kind of thing that would go from the lower level up to this. So at the rear of the property, these are 4 stories, thought the views of the woods and things like that might be good for that. And this presents it a solid 3-story mass, and it's 48 apartments in this scenario called option B. So those are the 2 varieties there, or variations.
Yeah.
So
Go on down and then click down one
you
and I'll
tell
tell
me
you.
how we're gonna do this, so. Are we trying to get over, is this
There
the
we
distance
go.
one?
That's better.
Your elevations.
Yeah.
There you go.
Go up and we'll be full screen.
So this is a view from 39, a drawing of it from 19 rather, 19 Acton Road at this point. And this is a section through the building showing how it steps down in this way. So similar to the model. And the top is 44 feet to this line through here. And floors are about 11 feet, so. And there are 4 floors, so. Go to the next, please. So this is the 3-story scenario, which is straight up 3, and then this is that penthouse kind of addition onto the top floor, onto the roof area. Go to the, this is showing number 19 Acton, and we're 11 feet, 11 and a half inches, it says, or it's a little too accurate. It's about 11 feet between the top of this peak here and the top of this parapet, which is about 3.5 feet above the roof line, which is this 44-foot line. Generally, we set a parapet around the wall, around the perimeter to hide condenser units and mechanical equipment and things like that.
This
But,
is option A or B?
this is option A, so, and the height, I would say, this is this distance away, okay, for option A. B comes more to the side, because there would be another floor, 3rd floor here. So that's how you would see that distance away from number 19. So it's in this area, but this wall is the same for the first 2 stories.
And the relative height for B?
The heights are this, if I go to the highest point, it's 44 feet. Okay, so in here, I'm 33 feet, basically, at this
Okay,
point.
so this is B.
So that's where I'd be. Shall we try another? This is the parking. We now have 102 spaces through our parking area, so our ratios have increased. We've lowered, raised the number of parking per in comparison to the number of units by adding a few more spaces into the garage.
Now, is the garage area larger than the 1st floor area?
Yes, it is.
So it actually goes underneath areas that on the surface are landscaped areas?
Yes, they do. I've done that many times before,
Yeah, I believe that. I'm just looking at where it is in,
through here.
yeah.
Yeah, because what
Yeah.
we've done is create a fire lane through here
Yeah.
at this point. It may be that some of this ultimate shifting, we just got this kind of information basically yesterday. So if we take this away and apply it back in another area, it's possible to shift these things and make it work. Next slide.
Oh, we have maybe.
You want to do this?
Yeah.
Take it further. You want to keep these?
Sure.
Good evening, I'm Brian Melisi with Whitman and Associates. So this is the latest site concept. Phil kind of walked you through the building part of it, some of the site amenities. That some of them the same, some of them got a little bit different. We did meet with the fire department, as Phil E. mentioned. Project team met with Chief Ryan, he met with Captain Katsoukas and Captain Poole. We kind of laid out the project and tried to get some of their preliminary input as was asked by the board. Obviously, their concern was access to the building. We basically we talked about 3 different areas, one being, we'll call it the west side, which is the access into the garage. It's 20 feet wide. We talked about grade. Well, we haven't done our topographic study yet. We told them the grade would be somewhere between 5.5% and 7%. It would be paved, it would be a wearable surface. They said typically anything below 10% they can deal with. We go to the east side, where some of the original information that was provided to the board had some concepts or some visuals there that had a hedgerow, which kind of separated the path from the building and whatnot. That became an area of concern. We talked about turning the path into a de facto fire lane. Current codes have a fire lane, they want to be 20 feet wide. We talked about a detail where the actual wearable surface would be 14 feet wide, concrete, probably not paving, but some type of wearable surface with 3 feet of reinforced grass on either side. We've used that detail on a couple of on private school jobs. They said they were very familiar with it, and it would be acceptable, so that would provide a 20-foot path on the east side of the building. Most of their concern had to do with the front of the building. They provided us with some calculations and some diagrams about getting aerial ladder access to the upper stories of the building. However, most of their calculations, or all of their calculations, had the apparatus sitting in Acton Road itself. And we had talked to them about, well, if we could get the ladder closer to the building into this front area, it would make easier for ladder access. And they were willing to look at that if and when the project goes further. There might be some details like mountable curbs, some signage of some fire lanes. One item on this plan is they took the pergola unit from the drop-off and they kind of cut that back a little bit, which would, so it doesn't impede access anymore. The green space is still basically the same. The footprint of the building itself stayed the same. Room for some pocket parks and dog parks in the back. Some of the walkways are now starting to be developed from the grist mill project. With all the leaves gone, you can kind of get a fairly nice visual. This would provide a nice connection. Obviously, the connection would be on the back property, but provide a nice connection for some of that connectivity that's talked about with some of the other boards and some of the other committees in town. But I believe, as far as I'm concerned, keeping it short, that's what I wanted to present to the board tonight. So, thank you.
Okay, very good.
So, obviously, we've got, we're not going to get too far tonight without town council's opinion. Maybe it might be helpful, though, at least for the next meeting, to find out if there's anything else, any other information outside of what town council is going to provide the board that the board would want from the applicant. Any more like visuals or anything else that maybe didn't address some of the things that we were looking for at the last meeting? Or any new issues?
Where does the path actually end up? I mean, I know it gets to the end of your property.
Mm-hmm.
There's a brook there.
I can show you the town's master plan. I don't have it on a slide, but the town has a master plan that shows.
I mean, you're looking for a significant density bonus for putting the path in.
Where's it go to?
Where does it go to? If it's gonna be a bridge that
Well,
has to
ultimately,
be
it's
built
gonna,
in the.
yeah, go ahead. 'Cause I know there was a slide that showed it, but I just don't know if it's in this.
Yeah, I don't know if there is either. So, some of that connectivity was always talked about getting from the rail trail, which is on the other side of Beaver Brook, bringing it across to the connectivity on this side of the property. And so what this does is provides a connection point to the point where we can only bring it, which is our property. And there's current studies, or they're looking at, the Center Village Committee is looking at ways to get that. Yep, I know the original master plan had some, an idea of putting a bridge a little further up. I believe there was a study that was shut down miserably at town meeting, so there's no funding for that. And what this may provide is a big chunk of that connectivity, where now certainly the connection point gets a lot smaller. And so what it does is it provides us a way from the walkability in the center to the rear of this property. And where it goes from here, there's a couple of concepts that we'd have to look at.
All right, the other thing is, you keep talking about pocket parks. I mean, this is just basically space for your people at this point, right? This is like.
This would be to have a place that the people who live there could use, maybe bring their dogs. And part of that was concern of the land trust owns property across the street, the Bartlett Park. And one of the concerns that they had raised is, will you have a place where if someone has a dog, they can bring their dog out on your property and not come across the street onto the land trust property?
So,
So that was one of the things we wanted to incorporate into the project.
so, I'm just trying to understand. I know you're putting a fire access on the side that you're calling a path at the same time. And what's the bonus density that you're looking for that?
Well, the path will be, what we're proposing is a path that will go along the side and along the rear of the property. So the path will not just be along the side.
Because that doesn't show it.
No, and again, at this stage, we normally wouldn't be. We're at the
Hey,
preliminary stage, but certainly, when we met with the town
I-
asked us to incorporate that as part of their overall plan. So there will be a path in the design that goes along the side as well as the rear of the property.
And as far as I get from that, I mean, unless you guys have a different, something from the land trust, I'm pretty much sure they don't want you to be putting a path through their property right now at this point, if I'm correct.
No, the land crest is across the street. We're not touching their
No, I mean,
property at all.
the property behind you.
That's
also
town,
land trust.
the property directly behind us?
To the left.
Oh, down that way, down by the Bartlett pathway? Yeah, we're not
But it's a
we're not
triangle.
proposing to do
Both
any work on
Your
their
left rear
property.
triangle.
Yeah. No, we're not proposing to do anything
So
on their
you're just
property.
basically putting a path around your property,
Correct.
and you want 8 units for that. And how big is this?
Well, this is what the town wants as part of their master plan. They
The
want
town-
each of
The
these.
town may want it. We're a
Right.
planning board. We have to decide whether it's worth it or not. Am
Well,
I
you
correct?
can decide whether or not you want to provide a bonus for it, but the town still may want us to include it because
That's
it
correct.
fits
I'm
in with their master
talking
plan.
I'm talking about the density bonus that you've
Correct.
you've put out in front of us. I mean, you guys have been big about talking about grist mill out behind you, but they were doing a lot more with path and a lot more with land.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Don't
only on their
bonuses.
property. They weren't doing anything beyond their property.
Yeah,
If I may,
No,
just to provide.
no, I'm not done.
Oh, sorry.
You keep cutting in, no.
Thought you were done, you paused. You had to take a breath.
Sorry, I'm not a professional politician or a lawyer. And the pocket park, which you're making for your own, for your own residents, that would be access to by the path for other residents out of the town, or is that just for your residents?
Well, part of the idea was an enclosed area where people could bring their dogs, which was the biggest concern, I think, one of the concerns raised by the land trust. I don't want to say it was their biggest. One of their concerns. So
For your tenants or for town residents?
we haven't decided that.
All right, because that's
gonna be.
that's a percentage thing that we as a board are
Right.
gonna be wrestling with. All right, now you can,
No,
And that's
a
certainly
question.
something we can talk to the board about. Again, we're at this phase, it's a more high-level concept phase, so we haven't made those final decisions other than to try to incorporate something to address the concerns we were
the
hearing.
only thing I'm looking at is, we're not looking at the high level at this point, but we're also looking at density bonuses, and we're trying to get to those numbers. That's what we're.
Right. And if the board would want that open to public, we could talk about that. I don't think it's something we would close the door on.
No, I'm just, we're trying to take and come up with a number, that's all. All right, that's,
Okay, you want to throw something in on that?
Yeah, I think Henry's comments are good ones. This project is unlikely to provide any connectivity to the left. So it's either gonna go straight, or it's gonna go to the right, or both. Both of those options are going to require, assuming this gets to a more detailed design phase, both of those options are going to either require the proponent to begin to reach out to the condo association at Grist Mill, when that's up and running, as well as the immediate abutter to the right, which I believe at the end of the fire lane is Mr. Hanley. Both of those properties are currently within the vision of the Brook Walk, and you're beginning to see some of that, those trails, those off-site trail improvements on this image. Conceptually, I think the board has, as Henry's mentioning, explore on-site amenities that are open to the public via easements. Maybe it's not the dog park, but maybe there's other opportunities. And in lieu of this proposal making headway with either of those two abutting private properties and being able to present an agreement to this board at a later date, your approval, your forthcoming approval, if need be, could codify financial contributions, but all of that needs to play on participation from abutting private property owners. That's something that nobody's been advancing. It's just been conversations at this point.
I'm just looking at, they
Yeah.
want a density bonus.
Yeah, agreed. And I think in the immediate term, if you do get to a applicability vote, as you recall, you've conditioned some of those applicabilities. So an example here may be where the board doesn't have the final details on justifying density bonuses, and your applicability can basically put a disclaimer or notice that this is what you're gonna be looking for. We've done that for a variety of kind of conditional applicability letters, where just as part of applicability, the board didn't take the time, or there just wasn't, you weren't gonna dive deep enough to resolve all the issues, but you were putting the applicant on notice if they chose to proceed. So there's details to be worked out, there's no question about it.
Nan, you had?
Yeah, I had a question for Brian. How have you considered the required landscaping transitional buffer zone to a residential zone? It requires a 20-foot landscaping buffer, trees and shrubs, and then a 10-foot separation between that and the building. And I'm not seeing anything here that addresses that. And I will tell you that we really, really, really try to protect our adjacent residential areas. So, to me, this is an important factor.
The way we read it, the initial buffer zones are 5 feet and 10 feet along the frontage. The transitional buffer is 20 feet, but it does allow for vehicular access cuts. And so what we would do is we would take that 5 foot here and we would beef it up with walls, 6 foot high walls, which allows for in the PCOD, in the plantings. We don't have a building within that 20 foot. We actually have more than that away. We're almost 30 feet away, so we're not in that transitional buffer zone. There's no parking in there, and there's no building in there. The way we read it, it doesn't have to be entirely landscaped. You can allow for vehicular access through that.
Okay, so the way I read it is that it says breaks for pedestrian and vehicle access are permitted, as opposed to taking over the whole thing for vehicular access. So I am certainly not reading it the way you do, and I don't believe this is providing a buffer to the adjacent residential area. So I don't believe it's in the spirit of it or the verbiage of it. So I do have concerns about that.
Yeah, I just got a couple of issues that I was gonna ask earlier, but we felt to do it now. Just clarification on some of the things. You guys will be looking for a waiver in the center village for access to curb cuts. It's allowed 1 to a public roadway. You've got 3. So you're gonna be looking for a waiver on that?
Only 4.
A 4 with the 4, I don't know if the fire department is considered public curb cut.
It's gonna be a curb cut, because they're not gonna go over the granite.
Right, so there are existing curb cuts already on site, so the question is utilizing what's already there. I think there's 2 curb cuts there. We'd be adding a third.
Okay.
I mean, you certainly could keep it to 2. We could reconfigure the front without a planter in the middle and just have one in the front with two-way in and out, and then one for our access. So we could keep it to the 2 that currently exist if the board.
Yeah, but I think you're
Prefer
looking
that.
at, you're taking the existing building away. So it's a whole new development in the spirit of the center village allows one access, one public access to your parcel.
I'd have to look at that. I'm not
So
sure.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's 195,
we can check on that.
126D.
Okay.
So that one there. And the other question for the architect, just so you know, in the center village piece of it does not allow any flat roofs. So, and that's the spirit of the overlay. That's on table 2, B. Just so when you're designing this, on the multifamily piece of it, no flat roofs are allowed. So that's something that's gonna come down the line that you're gonna come to an obstacle on to try to fit that in.
So the mansard, as I've shown.
You have a flat roof.
Considered a flat roof,
You have a flat roof. You just have a
Yeah.
parapet that's probably, what, 12 inches? How's your,
2.5 feet.
it's still a flat roof. But that's something just to consider. I don't know if you saw that in here.
Well, what is the pitch on your roof? What is the pitch on the roof?
It's a mansard.
Sloped roof, it would be considered flat behind that parapet, behind what looks like and appears the mansard
Yeah.
is. Thought that we should reference the hotel, for example, the historic hotel. And it's a bit like that, and, you know, our condensers and things like that would disappear behind it. It's a nice trick to hide them. So, yeah, it's a flat roof for portions of it.
That's just something I mean, you're gonna just be asking for a waiver. That's all I'm saying.
I understand,
Yeah.
I think, the guidance.
That's all. I mean, I like the idea of it. I said that before. I like the residential piece. I just think it's still large, too large. And I appreciate the elevations that you went and with the neighbors, looking at that. I mean, it now gives me a view, I think it's further on in your presentation here, of what the neighbors are gonna see.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, and we wanted to give you that visual, because that's.
you know, it'd be nice to see, especially you being a landscape architect, if we could put some mature tree, if this does go forward, we get past the density piece, we put some
Right.
large trees there that block, at least give them neighbors, some privacy with their pool. That's
We
there
wanted to
now.
give you like the unobstructed view rather than the prettied up view, but obviously there would be.
Oh, no, it's just reality, this is what we
That's-
see today.
Right, that's what we'd see,
Right.
but obviously our plan, if we get through the stage, would show significant landscaping, and we could show what it would look like, but we wanted to give you more of a visual in the dead of winter, or if there were no trees, here's what it looks like from that property, not factoring in significant
Right, and
landscaping.
it's still a little, it's pretty invasive right now to the neighbor next door,
Absolutely.
but thanks for meeting with them. That's all I have.
That's it. Tim, you good? Do you, can you tell us what the abutters were asking for?
In terms of the direct abutter or the conservation?
Any of the abutters. what
So we did have a meeting with the land trust, and I think the concerns that I heard, I don't want to speak for them, but the concerns that I got out of that meeting was, what if someone has a dog and the dog needs to go to the bathroom? Are they going to come across the way and go to the bathroom? And so that's what led us to think about an area that we could have for the residents on site. Another concern was, the potential town residents that would move into these units gonna think that land is pure town-owned land. And so one of the things we thought about was putting a restriction in the condominium documents that they would acknowledge that in fact it's technically private property. It's owned by a private charitable trust, and it's not part of their rights to this project. I mean, those were some of the concerns, I would say, as it relates to their parcel. Probably there were some concerns about the project unrelated to its association with the land trust in terms of size and things of that
About the
nature.
abutter next door.
But next door, I think, why don't I, if you don't mind, because I wasn't at that meeting, why don't I invite someone who was actually talking to you about it?
I'm Dennis Morgan. We met with the Fitzgibbons tonight, just before the meeting, and we went over it, and we basically were telling them, we can't tell you everything we're going to do right now, but this wouldn't be the first meeting. If we got the go-ahead from you guys, we'd be working with them. So we looked at their property, and, you know, they're here. There's a wall here. That's a nice element that we could help them with. The fence that you see on the property now, okay, is actually on 9 Acton Road's property. It's kind of an ugly fence. So that would come down. There's a whole bunch of mature trees.
Visuals? I'm just seeing, I think you guys had those visuals, didn't you?
No, I don't. If you just leave me a site plan, I'd be better off. Yeah, that doesn't really help. If you go to a site plan, I'm better off talking to that, if you don't mind. Yeah, this is good with the house here. So we basically saw 3 areas. There's one area here, there's one, the pool is back here, and then his land goes back further. We saw it in groupings. So obviously, things we talked about is something like Canadian hemlocks or something going in there, but not just a line of them, you know? Maybe we'd have 3 different areas where we throw in a little bit more mature trees also, in addition to the trees that are there. There are some dead trees there that are, I think, are on our property, but behind the fence that we'd be taking down. So basically it was, okay, if we're gonna be neighbors, if this does go forward, let's really talk about it. And as you know, Phil Oresco is a landscape architect. We would sit down and really talk about what they would like to see, we would like to see. But tonight, just in general, not restricted to what we talked about tonight, but we've talked about seeing it in 3 areas as it figures when you look, when it's their yard and look back and how it would look. And so we could make it very attractive for them and less intrusive and give them some screening. So we haven't come down to the final plans for anything. We threw out names like hemlocks and things of that sort. But I think it was a good initial meeting, you know, first preliminary meeting.
Excellent. I saw some of the pictures with people on decks, like, seemed like overlooking their property. That's why I was asking.
You're just afraid Wayne and I are gonna be on.
The other thing I have, when you mentioned about the property being undesirable, I can't help but chuckle to that, because I think it's a very desirable property. I think the landlord probably hasn't done a good job in finding tenants. How long's it been for sale? All right, you're not gonna get a good tenant when the property's on the market. Who's gonna wanna put a restaurant or anything in there, for that matter, when you're for sale? So, I kinda, just to take that out of the picture, if the abutters were satisfied, I would definitely like to still look at the commercial end of it and see what comes back from the attorney. And then we'll go
And
from there.
that, just so you know, that didn't come from the landlord, that came from a commercial broker, that information. It was the
Yeah, that's
commercial broker
okay.
who's
But I can tell you, I'm a commercial broker, residential broker, 15 years, and I don't even know if there's a for-lease sign out there.
There is.
Okay. Well, it's not an attractive, and I
It's
don't
also
think
for
he's
sale.
out seeking tenants as much. And plus, nobody's gonna really wanna get on board with something that's gonna be sold.
It's not being maintained.
Yeah, so,
It's
but
demo by
I don't wanna
number.
argue that,
Yeah.
that's fine, we both have different opinions on it. And we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, Donald?
To Mike's earlier comment regarding the curb cuts, whatever you do there is gonna be a considerable improvement considering what's there now. I mean, that's one gigantic curb cut and a building. I am concerned though, and we talked about the traffic, and we had purposely pushed the building over to the right and created that garage entrance there. Do you envision people exiting the property and taking a left onto Acton Road?
Yeah, they would be able to do that like they do that now. That certainly wouldn't be prohibited. Now, keep in mind, they're taking a left towards Chelmsford Center much further than what they're doing now. So we're as far away from what's happening now as we can be. But traffic, you know, if you look at the traffic study that we did at Gristmill, you know, you're looking at and that was based, I think, on 70 units. You were looking at peak traffic times, I believe, and I can get it to you, was 4 vehicles every 15 minutes at peak. But I'll get the study. I would think it's similar to this, if but obviously less because this is maybe half the number of units. But residential traffic counts will be much less than commercial traffic counts, obviously, or retail commercial traffic counts. So I can get you just to have that study to give you a flavor for what they were looking at on that project, vehicles coming in and out of Cushing Place during peak times.
Yeah, I
It
think
wasn't significant, it was pretty
That'd be
minor.
helpful. Also, even though you increase the number of parking spaces, you're still a little bit short on both A and B.
With the tandem spaces and the new down,
You need 2, right?
Few short, but we meet it.
Yeah.
meet it on the 48, but a couple short on the 52.
And that's for the unit and the additional 1 unit for every 5? Okay.
Because we added in, if you looked at the parking garage, we added in some tandem spaces. So
Right.
if you bought a unit, you could buy 2 spaces, but they'd be tandem back, front and back. So you'd basically have to deal with a significant other getting in and out of there.
Yeah, I
So
will
we can
tell-
make it work.
I will tell the board, you'll be surprised, but I'm a strong advocate for commercial. I don't think this parcel is appropriate for commercial,
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah,
All right.
certainly not not significant commercial.
No.
I just want to add just a little bit to that. I don't disagree with Tim's observations, but in the last 2 years, which is the time frame we've been engaged with the property owner, the most significant inquiry on that property was an adult daycare. And this gentleman had experience, know-how, but when he got into the building, I think it's, for some reason, it has an odd configuration. I haven't been in the building, but it didn't lend itself to be retrofitted for something as benign as an adult daycare. So when we think about retail or commercial, I think we're all thinking about vibrant, something that residents
Yeah.
want to use.
Well, we're not thinking the current building though, right? We would think a new building with commercial and residential. So it wouldn't be the same layout.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay,
Just for what it's worth.
all right. So we get this going to town council.
Yep. And I've got,
Why don't we,
I'm up to 8 bullet items now, because I added a few of the questions that came up
why
here.
don't we put it out for a continuation to the next meeting,
That's December 11th.
which is November 27th.
Nah,
Nope,
that's
that's
Thanksgiving.
No, that's
That's crossed out.
Thanksgiving.
Yet.
Highlighted it.
We're not doing that.
December 11th.
I like you guys, but I don't want to. I
You
don't want to
bring
see
the
that I
turkey.
put Thanksgiving.
Bring the turkey.
My wife will kill me too.
Really?
So,
All right, so December 11th,
okay.
we should have an answer back from Paul by then, I would hope.
All right, I will
I don't think
endeavor
it's
to
gonna
get on
take 'em
this
that long.
ASAP.
Yeah, and I'm assuming if we'll get a copy of that in advance of the meeting, and
Certainly.
depending on the answers, that might affect December 11th.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I'll get on it, and I would move that we continue to the meeting of December 11th.
Okay, we get a
Second.
second. We get a second.
Tim, go.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll see you on the 11th.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. That's out of
Nice
the way.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
The next
I hope
we
you
got,
eat too much and don't regret it.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah.
let them clear out for a second and.
No, I don't.
Can I ask a point of order question?
Yeah.
When are you gonna look for public inputs for this? As we're sitting here, I have
There
no
will not be on this.
It'll be until the public hearing opens.
Right, but I'm asking, I don't know.
We have no clue.
The next meeting is gonna be another applicability. We'll give them the applicability, they go back and they make plans. And then after they come back with plans, then it's
After
open for public
Christmas.
hearing.
Like
After Christmas.
January.
January, February.
Yeah, something like that.
Probably.
Yep.
Well, I'll let you know.
You
Yeah.
might be getting my texts.
Yeah.
You want to take 5?
Yeah, we can take 5 if you want.
Take 5.
Take 5.
Yeah, that was, Unless you don't feel like it.
You want it?
Yeah, 'cause they have.
All right, I'm gonna call the meeting back to order. Make the record show that Glenn Cole has left at 8 o'clock. All right, new public hearing, off Tobin Road. Previous approved definition of a subdivision. Off Tobin, the applicant requests a major modification to a previously approved subdivision approval and waivers, and applicable waivers. Under the subdivision control law and the rules and regulations governing the subdivision law of the town of Chelmsford, and Article Aquifer
14.
Protection, 14, Aquifer Protection District Special Permit. The project proposes to create 5 new lots that each contains a 2-family dwelling with frontage on the via new roadway. This site is located in a RC zoning. The site is approximately 3.29 acres, shown on the assessors map 20, block 50, lot 5. And as for that, that's it. You got the podium.
I have,
Nope, sorry.
not quite, I have 3 letters to read. Okay, first one, this is from Colleen Stansfield.
No.
That's what it says, from.
That's the,
Is this one right here?
so it's Board of Health.
Okay, so,
Health.
all right, got you. No comments. Well, it says it's from you. Okay, yeah, it does. Honest to God, it's a memo from.
It's a memo to them, and they replied.
Oh, all right, got you. All right, the next one is from Captain Katsufis of the Fire Department. Dear members of the board, hydrant locations shown on this plan are adequate. The Chelmsford Fire Department requires a hydrant within 500 feet of every building for manual firefighting operations. Hydrants shall remain free from all landscaping obstructions. At the time of the November 2018 application, the proponent provided this office with a plan that showed adequate access for firefighting access and other emergency vehicles. All fire lanes shall be marked with approved pavement markings and/or approved signage. Fire access roads shall bear a registered engineer's stamp and shall be capable of supporting the weight of a fire apparatus. Fire access roads and turnarounds shall be designed with swept path analysis using the AASHTO BUS 45 template. The applicant must submit an application to the Fire Chief, Gary Ryan, with 3 choices for a street name, as was requested in the Fire Department letter dated November 14th, 2018. To date, this application has not been completed. In addition, the applicant must submit an application to the Town of Chelmsford E911 Committee for addresses through its coordinator, Town Clerk Tricia Tsuris. This office would approve of this plan with these conditions, and I ask the board to make this letter a part of their approval process. Respectfully submitted, Daniel J. Katsufis. And the third one, from North Chelmsford Water District. Dear board members, the North Chelmsford Water District has reviewed the applicant's proposal to construct 5 2-family dwellings off of Tobin Avenue. The North Chelmsford Water District will supply water with a full understanding that the applicant shall follow the rules and regulations of the North Chelmsford Water District and the Chelmsford Fire Department's requirements and agree to the following conditions. 1.
Probably there.
Yeah, oh, you got another one?
Yep.
Okay.
There's that one.
1, the 2-family dwellings will have straight lineal separately sleeved 1-inch water services for each unit and will be separately metered with the R900 radio red water meters. 2, each unit will be charged an entrance fee of $5,000 at the multi-dwelling unit rate, 10 in total. 3, the new 6-inch ductile iron water main will be looped from Tobin Ave as shown on Plan SK01 dated 11/09/2018 and tied into the existing 6-inch cast iron pipe main located on John Street. This will eliminate any potential dead ends. The applicant shall install gate valves at each end and at the intersecting easement. The applicant shall pay all costs. 4, The applicant must grant the North Chelmsford Water District a written descriptive easement with the rights to enter upon for the purposes of upgrades, repairs, etc., from the public part of Tobin Avenue through the proposed Tobin Avenue to the public part of John Street, including the section to the end of the cul-de-sac. 5, all materials, inspections, overhead entrance fees, tapping of domestic water service, etc., will be coordinated through the North Chelmsford Water District. Sincerely, Bruce J. Harper, Superintendent. And hot off the presses. Another one, let's see. Gary Persichetti, okay. Dear members, this office has reviewed the subdivision plans by Hancock Associates consisting of 8 sheets dated September 19th, 2018, revised through August 20th, 2019, and a supplemental data report dated September 20th, 2018, revised through August 20th, 2019. As a result of this review, this office has the following comments. 1, this department shall be notified when work on site is to commence in order to arrange for inspections. 2, any revision to the drainage system shall be submitted and approved by this office. 3, the stormwater operation and maintenance plan shall be followed as described in the report. Copies of any inspections or other reports done in accordance with the plan shall be forwarded to the engineering office. 4, the drainage system shall remain private. The owners will be responsible for routine maintenance of the entire drainage system. 5, a site as-built shall be provided upon completion of the work on site. As-built to include a letter from the engineer stating that all stormwater devices have been built to satisfy Mass stormwater standards. Provide all supporting documents and calculations. The as-built shall be from a ground survey and submitted in AutoCAD and paper form. 6, all unsuitable material, if any, discovered in the excavation for the infiltration system shall be removed and disposed of in accordance with state and local regulations. 7, this project requires an NPDES construction general permit. A final copy of the water pollution prevention plan must be submitted to the town as well as filed with the EPA prior to beginning any site work. 8, the proposed sewer work will require permitting and applicable fees from the DPW sewer division for connection to the municipal sewer system. 9, a road opening permit is required from the Chelmsford DPW Highway Division for work within the Tobin Ave right-of-way. 10, trench permits shall be filed as necessary per 520 CMR 14.00, Chapter 82A. 11, a bond shall be established with the town prior to the release of any lot. 12, a street sign and private way sign as directed by the E911 committee shall be provided at the intersection of the private road and Tobin Ave. 13, the design engineer has received design and drafting review comments from this office. If you have any questions, please contact this office at 978-250-5228. Sincerely, Christina Papadopoulos. And that's it.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is William Harvey. I'm the principal of SGC Development and also the developer of this property. As you well know, back in January 23rd of 2019, this board approved a 4-lot subdivision by unanimous vote of 6 to 0. Tonight, we're asking for a modification of that plan, which will now increase the lots from 4 to 5 units. Now, with regards to this property, the property is located off Tobin Ave. It's directly behind the St. John's Church off of Middlesex Street. The property contains 3.9 acres of land. The zoning for this area is RC, which allows either single or two-family dwellings. We're proposing, obviously, two-family dwellings. It meets zoning use. It also meets the dimensional tables for zoning, which would be the frontage of 125 feet minimum, 20,000 square foot lots, as well as we also meet all the side rear setbacks. The issue that we had once before when it was approved was access to the property. That's been resolved. That was approved by town meeting. And then also just recently, October 21st, 2019, by the Board of Selectmen, which approved the RFP to SGC Development, which was the sole bidder on the easement.
So therefore, access could go from the end of Tobin into the property. Now, also with regards to the property, previously, the previous plan showed that the sewer would be going from, obviously, the development through St. John's Church parking lot, which I have an easement, to Middlesex Street to connect to the sewer. That's been changed. We've brought the elevation up substantially on the property, and we have an elevation that will allow a flow of sewer to Tobin now. So that won't be necessary to go through the wetlands or through the parking lot. In addition, by doing that, the previous way of doing it too was John Street, which it eliminates any type of grinder pumps that would obviously be, the town's responsible for those, would be 10, so we don't have to worry about the grinder pumps. In addition, the maintenance of this road, it's going to be a private roadway, most similar to a development that I did not too long ago, which was on Ready Way. The roadway will be maintained by a homeowners association or also possibly a condominium association. And also have a stormwater maintenance plan as requested by the DPW, in addition to maintaining the easement stormwater maintenance also. There is a manhole, there is a drainage on that town-owned property, which would obviously be maintained by the association. Comments from the fire department, obviously E911 application will be submitted promptly. In addition, we went before the conservation. Conservation issued an order of conditions. The conditions were recorded October 22nd, 2019. So the reason why we're before you is this plan was reviewed by town council relative to whether or not this is a minor or a major modification. The reason why it turned into calling it a major modification is simply a minor shift in the road with regards to the alignment, which brings it into so-called major modification. So other than the last plan, it's obviously very similar, other than the fact that you have one additional lot. The roadway is still the same size. Pretty much my engineer is President Brian Goodrow from Hancock Associates, that will get into specifics about roadway width, access, and elevations. The lighting will be pretty much the same. There'll be lighting outside of each unit, so there'll be a total of 10 light poles out in the units. There's thought about additional parking that was put on the plan. So there was still, there was a lot of time and consideration designing this plan to fit well with the area. So, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Wayne, where's this extra building?
The extra building
Is right here.
the extra lot.
So what was different from the last plan where you only got 4 and now you can do 5?
That will, my engineer will discuss with relative to the
Oh, okay.
elevations.
Just shifting, was it just dimensions?
No.
Good evening. So for the record, Brian Goodrow with Hancock Associates. Colleen, if you could pull up the other,
Which one do you want?
the 4 lot?
Yeah,
the one
that's
that
what
was
I'm pulling up now.
Perfect. So we're going to flip back and forth between the two very quickly, and you'll be able to see that essentially what we've done is we've changed the horizontal alignment of Tobin Ave extension, if you will, and shifted it south slightly to pull it away from the slope. And that did 2 things. It allowed us to go into the slope, which is something that we were trying to avoid. And up until we actually got on site, began to clear trees and grub, we didn't fully understand what the subsurface conditions were of the hill, if you will. And once we got into it, we realized that it really wasn't something to shy away from. And we had an opportunity to use on-site fill to be able to create the elevation change that we needed for the gravity flow of sewer out to Tobin. So if you look at this plan,
Yeah.
the cul-de-sac, the bulb, if you will, was kind of in the hill area. It's indicated in that green triangle where we were trying to not do regrading activity. And then the new plan, we pulled that back. We went into the hill to create some regrading, and that allowed us a fifth lot and grade for backyards and things like that. So essentially, it's the same roadway length, same stormwater management, same grading scheme, same utilities. We just moved the road south slightly.
Okay.
Can you flip it again?
You want the 4 again?
Yeah, can you flip?
I can shrink the screens and put them side by
I'm
side.
happy to highlight with my finger
Okay.
if that makes it easier.
No, that's all right. Go back. Thank you.
Did you have to add any additional parking?
We did not. So I believe we had 7 previously, and we are maintaining an excess of 7 guest spaces, if you will. So the way that these units are designed is they have 1-car garages, and then there are rather lengthy driveways because of the front yard setback. So there's the ability to kind of triple stack cars, if you will, 1 in the garage, 2 in the driveways, and then we have 7 additional spaces throughout the private subdivision.
All right, well, we'll take questions around. Starting with you, Nancy.
Are these 3 stories?
2.5, I believe, and that's with the drive-under garage.
And it's garage on the first floor, not under?
First floor, if you will, yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay. How are you stabilizing that slope now that you're digging into it?
So after regrading activities have been completed, it will be loamed, seeded, and then stabilized with jute mat.
Okay. I like it.
Mike?
I'm fine with it.
It's a nice looking project. When I drove down, there was a lot of tire tracks and stuff down the end. Will it be finished off as a road at the end down there?
Yeah, so the entirety of Tobin Ave is going to be a 20-foot paved surface, and it's going to be a glorified driveway, but it'll look like a road because of the fact that there's 10 units out there. The end of Tobin Ave is going to be a rather large swath of pavement that is encompassed by the units on lot 3 and lot 4, and that's to accommodate fire turning apparatus.
That looks like a good project.
And is sewer coming out Tobin, your
It is.
easement there?
There is none. It's through the easement that Mr. Harvey just acquired from the town of Chelmsford.
Where the sewer will go?
Where the sewer will go, yep. There's an existing sewer manhole in Tobin Ave proper, kind of in the straight leg down at the bottom, and we're going to extend it up into the subdivision.
You add 2 additional units and it's an improvement.
We like to think so.
Looks
Yeah,
good.
looks good.
All right, the only other comment I have is I'm much happy with the sewer and everything going out Tobin instead of going across the wetlands and up through there. I just think this is a much better solution. And yes, I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve, this is a major,
It is a
This is a public hearing.
public hearing.
Public hearing.
oh, that's right. Then you have to open it up.
Well, we'll open it up to the public. Anybody from the public want to come up and speak? Come on up.
My name is Peggy Simpson. I live at 24 Tobin Ave, and I know it's going to be unanimous, but I would like to request that the planning board votes no on this proposal. You are talking about bringing 10 families into this small area. Nowadays, when families, they usually have 2 cars each. So we're talking 20 extra cars, 10 families on that small road. I think it's way too much. When this project was proposed in 2018, Mr. Harvey sent a letter to all the neighbors, and I quote, "The original plan was to construct 5 condexes. I decided to reduce the number in order to decrease the density and provide more open and green space to the project. Does Mr. Harvey now feel the density and green spaces are not important features to the new owners of his condexes? If the density was an issue a year ago, why is that issue just gone away now? Perhaps it's financial reasons, I don't know. I'm also concerned with the slope in the back of the property. I've seen young kids running and sliding down that hill several times already. In the winter, it's going to be a fabulous sledding place. I can just see, the neighborhood kids out there. Will a fence be put on the top or what? I see a lot of green stuff up on top of that slope. There's like a few little trees, that's it. So someone could just roll down that hill. I'd like to know when the foundations are going in. Are they going in now or are they going in the spring? There's also the question about the vegetation. In the letter from last year, Mr. Harvey, quote, keep as much vegetation as possible between the current homes and the development. I live right across from the hydrant, and I can tell you everything has been taken. There is not one blade of grass left, never mind vegetation. He's built an enormous gravel pit on that land. I understand some little bushes, so forth, will be put in, but it's just ruined the neighborhood. And the only vegetation is all the tree branches and the roots that have been buried in the gravel pit. So again, I request the planning board vote no on this proposal. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public have to speak? Seeing none. Mr. Harvey, do you want to comment on any of that, or?
I'd like to just bring up one point that Mr. Shanahan brought up relative to the construction area at the beginning of Tobin. Now, at the beginning of Tobin, we all know that essentially that's a lot. It's owned by the town. That right there, while we're doing the landscaping of the property, the landscaping of the town property will also be done. That'll be reloomed, reseeded, and also there'll be a substantial amount of landscaping done on the property.
Make a motion to close. Let me just ask a question. When is the foundations going in, to answer the question? When are you planning it?
Spring.
Spring.
Yep.
And do you have a landscaping plan that show plant trees going back in?
No. It'll be done.
Not required by the board?
Wouldn't it require when it was
we don't
done?
get into
No,
that.
not for this.
Okay.
Enough of this.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Make a motion.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's up to you.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other comments? Anybody else want to say anything?
Michael, are you good with the landscaping?
I was just asking Nancy, do we look at the landscaping on a project like this?
Not for a subdivision.
Only street trees.
Do we, yeah, we don't have the right to look at the landscaping on this, do we?
Only street trees.
We don't have requirements for the
That's
landscape.
what I'm
Yeah, not.
on that aspect.
This is these are individual residential properties once we
You're
do
not
approve the
approving anything on the
subdivision.
individual
Right.
lots.
So we're not approving the size of the houses or anything else.
He's done other projects that he's also
Yeah.
finished
Some,
off.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm sure if there was accommodation that could be made for the landscaping,
Okay.
it would address it. I mean, if you had a concern.
Well, no, I'm just trying to figure out, is that just gonna be cleared all the way across? Is that, right now, if the neighbor is saying that's 100% clear, are you just gonna put grass everywhere and put the homes in, and you're gonna be able to see from one to the other end?
No, it's obviously, just like with my other projects, there'll be numerous trees planted, there's gonna be numerous shrubs, there's gonna be a lot of seeding of the property, the hill will be seeded, the town property will be seeded. Again, there'll be a substantial amount of vegetation there. In addition, I did the best I could not to cut all the trees down. Unfortunately, it was a major expense, not number one, to first cut down the trees, because a tree clearing company came in. I asked them to save a certain amount of buffer as I could, and that's what they did. And after they cut all those trees down, then when we came into the plan and marked everything out, the other trees had to come down, and they were not healthy trees. There were trees that would have overhung the units, which an insurance company would immediately tell the homeowners that they would have to come down. So there really wasn't any trees there to save, unfortunately.
Mr. Harvey, you're okay with the conditions by DPW and the water department? And
There was one, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I did put that in my notes. The one condition relative to a bond, excuse me? Condition 11, right, relative to the bond requirement. I'd ask that the board waive that requirement, and the reason why is because the roadway will be essentially completed prior to the installation of the foundations. The binder will be down. So by requiring a bond, which will in effect cost money before you're allowed to issue a building permit, it's just an unnecessary expense. I remember I came before you with regards to Ready Way, and I certainly understand the DPW's request for something like that, because it's their duty to protect the town, and that a developer just doesn't come in, never finishes the road and leaves. But I came before you with regards to Ready Way. That was waived for that project. It wasn't a large project, it was 4 houses. And I'd seek a similar request, just so I wouldn't have to come up with a bond for a road that's already gonna be in before the foundations. At least the binder will be in.
Okay. All right, well, the only way I can handle that is go around and ask board opinions on that. How do you feel, Nancy, about the?
I mean,
Can we place a requirement that the road be finished before the foundations are permitted in lieu of a bond?
what's that?
You may not need to.
Bill? Pay attention.
Just looking at my engineer.
So my question was, can we put a requirement on that the road's finished before the foundations are permitted?
So I would kind of
In lieu of a bond?
Yeah, I would try to reword that a little bit, that binder be down before foundation permits are pulled, because you don't want to put a top coat down and still have heavy equipment on the site.
That makes sense.
Because you'll damage it.
That makes sense to me.
I'd be fine with that.
I'm good.
And you're good?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be good
I
with
would
that.
rather talk to the engineering department too,
Yeah.
to see what they have to
That's
say,
right.
because I know there's a lot goes on with the finished coat.
Right, so as with Ready Way, I don't recommend that you waive a bond. There's more to a subdivision than just the base coat of the roadway. There are more things involved that could potentially lead to an unsafe situation for residents who are moving in, or potential residents, if a contractor does just for any unknown reason leave the project unfinished. And that's why we have that in place, or ask for that to be in place.
Was there an issue with Ready Way?
Not that one specifically, but we've
Yes.
had many other
Did we waive the
projects.
bond? That was-
They did waive the bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I suggested that they did not.
Okay.
Have we had any issues with this developer not adequately finishing a project?
Well, I'm relatively new to the town as well, so I don't know how
recall
many.
any.
other
Within
projects. So I-
within your history of it, do we have any history with
Not
this
that
developer?
I recall, not that I've had any issues
Okay.
with.
No.
Again, it could be any developer.
I understand.
It happens all the time.
Oh, if he's got a proven track record, I would.
Yeah,
If he did it with Ready Way,
Evan, you,
I would just say, if this plays out the way the applicant is stating, that prior to foundations being, foundation permits being issued, that all the infrastructure, water, sewer, everything under the roadway to binder is done, which I think is somewhat how Ready Way proceeded.
Yeah.
then the normal procedures that most developers undertake wouldn't be necessary. So normally, most developers want to put a covenant as guarantee. So they can pull building permits for Lot 1 and Lot 2, and then the covenant restricts Lot 3 and 4 from being.
I think that's exactly what we did.
Yeah,
in Reading
exactly.
Way.
Well, that's what we did.
Yeah.
The applicant came back to you, proposed an alternative scenario. What I'm hearing tonight is that he intends to put the infrastructure in, road to binder, before applying for building permits. What that does is that removes most of the primary public concerns that the town usually has. As Christina's indicating, there are still punch list items that costs do add up, as bills, monumentation, things of that nature. My understanding of the bond related to private ways is that it's primarily associated with the road opening permit where the private way meets the public way. That's my understanding. If this were a public way, the town would have much more interest in the quality of the work being done, the inspection, the amount of inspections, things of that nature. Ultimately, it's DPW who does the inspections and.
Yeah, even on a private way, I understand.
What's the cost of the bond for this project, you estimate?
I don't think one was proposed.
So again, for a private way, I believe the general condition is a $10,000 bond prior to any lot release. What this applicant is suggesting to you is that he wouldn't need any lot releases because he's going to build the entire infrastructure, the subdivision.
At once, right?
At once before seeking building permit. That's fine. As I'm stating, my understanding of a private way bond is that it's in the amount for $10,000, which doesn't cover nearly the cost to build the road.
Right.
It's to protect the public interest where the private way work meets the public. Is that your understanding of it?
That's one part of it. I think there's, again, if you start, building one unit at a time, and then something could happen.
So what we would normally do, and what we still do, is if there's no covenant and there's no bond, we will attempt to use the issuance of a building permit or occupancy as leverage.
Occupancy in the last.
Yeah, and that's pretty effective. Again, I don't think we have any particular concerns here, as the board has indicated. I mean, he's done this before. He's a known entity. He's in town. But we still have leverage. The only way this scenario changes is if it's a phased development, or he's seeking plans change and he's seeking foundation permits or building permits for a Lot 1 or Lot 2 in order to finance.
He would have to come back.
The road, yeah.
Depending, so my suggestion is, I'll let me draft a decision. I'll submit it to the board. I'll forward it to the applicant so that they have input on the decision that you're reviewing. I think you could even keep the hearing open, or reopen it and keep it open in case you need to have some dialogue with the applicant. But if the applicant is certain that it's gonna play out where the entire subdivision is built prior to foundations and building permits being issued, we're left with some miscellaneous, public interests.
We just approve it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just approve it and
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so I mean,
Make a motion.
the decision, if I understand correctly, is still gonna contain the provision for the 10,000 bond to cover, street opening permit. That's my understanding of a private way bond. And like I said, the final leverage is building permits and occupancy permits. Which is
Acceptable
typical.
to you, Mr. Harvey?
Well, I don't want to have to provide any type of a bond. What I'm asking is that that bond be waived, but the entire infrastructure, as Mr. Belansky stated, will be completed before a foundation will be requested.
Yeah.
So the sewer will be in, the water will be in, the roadway first binder will be in, so
I'm good with that.
I'm good
what
with
we
that.
So we're minus the top coat.
Yeah, minus the top
All
coat.
right, so
I
we're minus
mean,
the top coat, and at some point, the homeowners, since it's a private way, are just gonna be responsible for that road, so they might be a little bit more upset.
if
with
anything
you don't put
changes, you
that
would have
top
to come
coat in.
back.
Yeah, so what happens in reality is those homeowners, when they're looking to purchase the lot, they'll call town hall, they're gonna ask, what guarantees are there in place that the top coat be done? The answer in this particular case is gonna be none.
None.
It's, you're relying on whatever
Yeah.
legal
That's the answer.
documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
That's
just,
the
we're
answer.
treating this, slightly different. The applicant's asking for this consideration.
yeah.
In relative to the Ready Way, with regards to the first two sales of the houses, the purchase and sale agreement did have an addendum with regards to finishing the driveways with a finish coat, which the two houses actually got today, and also obviously responsible for the finish coat for the roadway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So, you moved?
So the hearing's closed, you're
Yeah.
in the process of taking a vote, I believe.
I
Make a
second,
motion?
Oh,
did
he
you-
already
did
made
you
one.
Make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
All right,
subject to all the stuff we've discussed. I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And
I'm looking
now,
for one more.
I, Mr. Chairman, would be pleased and privileged to move for adjournment.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent job.